This video is dedicated to the men who never made it home, a debt their comrades carry into every operation that follows. What you're about to see is not fought for glory. It's fought in their name, with the same fury and resolve that drives men to keep going long after exhaustion should have stopped them. The scene unfolds in the Luhansk region, where Ukrainian fighters, among them a soldier known as Dima, move through terrain that offers little safety and even less certainty about what waits around the next stretch of ground. Overhead, the persistent hum of drones adds its own layer of dread to an already tense advance, every soldier aware that enemy presence somewhere nearby could reveal itself at any moment. Radio traffic stays clipped and urgent, tactical commands passed quickly between team members trying to coordinate movement while the danger around them shows no sign of easing. Every exchange carries weight, the kind of tension that comes from operating in contested ground where a single miscommunication could prove costly. Mid the advance, the team comes across a wounded Russian soldier, and in that moment, something personal surfaces in Dima, a raw mixture of pain and resentment that goes beyond the tactical demands of the mission itself. For men who have already lost so much to this war, encounters like this one carry a weight that extends far past the immediate battlefield, old grief resurfacing in the presence of the enemy responsible for so much of it. The team pushes forward through increasingly dangerous terrain, fires and explosions compounding the chaos around them, every step forward another reminder of exactly what this war costs the men fighting it, one contested stretch of ground at a time.
А ну ебало свой покажи, я тебя знаю или нет? Зовут тебя как?
Дима.
Дима, блядь, столько злости на вас, пизда. Так вот, чтобы ты понял, я с Луганска. Я на русском говорю, блядь, чтобы ты понял.
The advance brought the team within range of a nearby shelter, identified as an active enemy position, and the decision was made quickly to secure it, soldiers calling for firearm support to reinforce the assault before committing fully to the engagement. Approaching a defended shelter demands exactly this kind of preparation, ensuring enough firepower is coordinated and ready before soldiers expose themselves to whatever resistance waits inside. The engagement that followed proved decisive. 6 Russian soldiers within the shelter were eliminated during the assault, a result that drew genuine surprise and something close to quiet admiration from within the Ukrainian team itself, the kind of reaction that surfaces when an engagement resolves more cleanly and completely than the tension leading up to it might have suggested. Success like this, 6 confirmed kills in a single coordinated push, rarely comes without real risk, and the team's reaction reflected both relief and respect for how effectively the assault had actually gone. In the aftermath, soldiers moved through the shelter confiscating enemy equipment, radios among the most valuable items recovered given their potential intelligence value. The team wasted little time putting that equipment to use, listening in closely on intercepted Russian communications, gathering whatever insight they could into the broader situation unfolding around them. What came through the radio painted a stark picture of the enemy's state, Russian troops shouting orders across the net, some of the exchanges carrying open threats and direct commands to kill, a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the mindset driving the opposing force in this sector. Despite the chaos surrounding them, ongoing movement, the aftermath of an intense firefight, and now the added complexity of monitoring hostile communications, the Ukrainian soldiers maintained a level of calm and coordination that stood out clearly against the noise and tension of everything happening around them. That composure, holding steady focus even while absorbing the aggressive, threatening tone coming through the captured radio, reflected the same discipline that had carried the team through the assault itself, a reminder that controlling one's own response under pressure often matters just as much as any individual engagement in determining how an operation ultimately unfolds.
Телефон. Это разведка, походу.
The engagement continued to intensify as the team pushed further into contested ground, close-range firefights erupting with the kind of sudden intensity that leaves little time for anything beyond immediate reaction. In the middle of this escalating exchange, one fighter took a wound but refused to let the injury pull him out of the fight entirely, continuing to engage and successfully neutralizing multiple enemy soldiers even while managing his own pain and the physical limitations the wound imposed. This kind of resolve, fighting through injury rather than immediately withdrawing, reflects both the adrenaline of close combat and the genuine determination that has come to define soldiers operating under these conditions throughout the war. Grenades became a critical tool as the fighting continued. Coordinated throws timed alongside direct fire to create tactical openings the team could exploit, denying Russian positions any real opportunity to stabilize or organize an effective counter. This combination, explosive disruption paired immediately with follow-up engagement, allowed the Ukrainians to maintain the initiative even as the fighting grew more chaotic and close. Amid the intensity, leadership within the team continued emphasizing discipline, reminding fighters to maintain stealth where possible and exercise control rather than allowing the momentum of successful engagements to push them into unnecessary risk. This kind of restraint is difficult to maintain in the heat of an ongoing firefight. The temptation to press an advantage aggressively often running counter to the more patient, calculated approach that actually keeps soldiers alive over the course of a sustained operation. The emphasis on not risking too much reflected hard-earned wisdom, and understanding that overextending in pursuit of a quick, decisive victory can just as easily expose a team to disaster if the situation shifts unexpectedly. Throughout this stretch of fighting, the Ukrainian forces continued monitoring intercepted Russian radio communications, extracting whatever intelligence details they could from the ongoing chatter. This steady stream of information offered insight into enemy positioning, morale, and intent, a genuine tactical advantage layered on top of the team's own combat effectiveness, allowing decisions to be made with a clearer picture of what the opposing force was actually planning rather than relying purely on direct observation. As the engagement continued to unfold, the team began preparing for the arrival of both reinforcements and aerial support in the form of FPV drones, additional capability that would help sustain and potentially expand the pressure already being applied against Russian positions in the area. Coordinating this kind of combined support takes time, and until it arrived, the soldiers already engaged continued maintaining pressure on their own, unwilling to ease off and give the enemy any opportunity to reorganize while waiting for the reinforcement and aerial assets that would ultimately help push the operation toward its conclusion.
За. Плюс-плюс остання граната, бо вже без чеки.
The fighters pushed forward into the wooded terrain ahead, moving with deliberate caution against enemy positions that had shown no sign of yielding easily. Dense forest cover created the same familiar challenges that had defined earlier phases of the operation: limited sightlines, unpredictable angles of approach, and the constant possibility that a defender could remain concealed until the last possible moment. Firefights erupted repeatedly as the team advanced, each engagement carrying real risk given how close the fighting had become in the confined spaces between the trees. Casualties mounted as the advance continued, several Ukrainian fighters reporting injuries of varying severity as the sustained combat took its toll. What stood out amid this difficult stretch was the resolve shown by the wounded themselves, many encouraged by their comrades, and by their own sense of duty to continue contributing to the fight even as medics worked to attend to their injuries. This is not an easy balance to strike, treating a wound seriously enough to prevent further harm while also recognizing that, in many cases, a soldier capable of continuing to provide cover or maintain a position remains genuinely valuable to the broader effort, especially when the team's numbers were already stretched thin by the intensity of the ongoing engagement. Radio communication throughout this phase reflected a level of discipline that had clearly been built through extensive shared experience, commands flowing with the kind of clarity and precision that comes only from soldiers who trust each other and understand exactly what information matters most in the moment. Coordination extended across multiple simultaneous concerns, managing the timing and positioning of reinforcements still en route, ensuring wounded comrades received appropriate support without unnecessarily exposing the medics attending to them, and continuously anticipating how Russian forces might attempt to maneuver in response to the pressure already being applied. Juggling this many demands simultaneously, all while remaining engaged in active combat, speaks to the depth of training and battlefield experience running through the unit. Amid the tactical exchanges, moments of genuine frustration surfaced in the dialogue between soldiers, particularly regarding the persistent artillery shelling that continued to complicate their advance and threaten their positions regardless of how effectively they managed the more immediate infantry engagement. Artillery represents a different category of danger entirely, indiscriminate in a way that close-quarters combat is not, capable of inflicting casualties regardless of tactical skill or positioning. The soldiers voiced that frustration openly, an honest acknowledgement of how exhausting and demoralizing sustained indirect fire can become even for experienced fighters. Yet alongside that frustration ran an equally clear and unwavering resolve to hold their ground regardless, the shelling treated as an obstacle to endure rather than a reason to abandon the position they had fought so hard to reach. Throughout this demanding stretch of the operation, soldiers took time, even amid the chaos, to document the injuries being sustained, a practical necessity for ensuring proper medical follow-up and maintaining accurate records of the unit's condition as the engagement continued to unfold. This kind of documentation might seem like a minor administrative detail set against the backdrop of active combat, but it reflects the same disciplined thoroughness that characterized every other aspect of how this team operated, understanding that accurate information now would matter considerably once the immediate danger had passed and proper medical care could be arranged. What emerged most clearly across this entire phase of fighting was the remarkable strength of morale within the unit, a cohesion that seemed to grow rather than fracture under the weight of casualties, exhaustion, and the relentless pressure of sustained combat. Camaraderie showed itself not in any single dramatic gesture but in the accumulated small moments, soldiers checking on each other between engagements, encouraging wounded comrades to hold on just a little longer, sharing the burden of decision-making even as fatigue set in across the entire group. These harsh conditions, close combat in unforgiving terrain, mounting injuries, and the constant threat of artillery might reasonably be expected to erode a unit's cohesion over time. Yet what the footage captured instead was a team drawing closer together precisely because of everything they were enduring collectively. This resilience, forged through shared hardship rather than despite it, reflects something that recurs consistently across the 3rd Assault Brigade's operations throughout this war, a bond among soldiers that proves remarkably durable even under the most demanding circumstances, carrying men through exactly the kind of grueling, extended engagement that this particular stretch of fighting in the Luhansk woods had clearly become. Whatever the eventual outcome of this specific operation, the team pushing forward through these woods had already demonstrated the kind of hardened, battle-tested unity that separates soldiers capable of enduring sustained combat from those who might otherwise break under considerably less pressure than what this engagement had already demanded from every man involved.
Своя! Підвал! Надо в укриття. Над нами дрон!
Эй, пацаны, работаем вперед, ребят!
Эту посадку, что перед тобой! Трактор 300!
Катуха, Крина!
Можете надати допомогу, першу допомогу і в укриття.
Amid the aftermath of the fighting, Ukrainian medical teams turned their attention to a captured Russian soldier, providing first aid with the same care and urgency extended to their own wounded throughout the operation. This moment carried its own quiet significance, a clear contrast drawn between the humanitarian treatment offered by the Ukrainians and the brutality that had characterized so much of what the team had witnessed and endured from the opposing force throughout this engagement, and others like it. Treating a captured enemy soldier's wounds is never simply a procedural obligation. It reflects a deliberate choice about what kind of conduct a unit holds itself to, even in the aftermath of a fight that had cost them dearly. As the immediate danger began to fade, a palpable sense of relief settled over the fighters, the kind of exhale that only comes after surviving an engagement as fierce and sustained as the one they had just endured. Genuine gratitude surfaced among the men, an acknowledgement shared quietly between comrades that they had made it through, that the accumulated risk of the past hours had not claimed more than it already had. In this calmer stretch, moments of levity began to emerge as well, small flashes of humor that offered welcome relief after the relentless tension of sustained combat, hope quietly reasserting itself now that the immediate crisis had passed. That human dimension of war showed itself most clearly in the friendly banter and light rivalry exchanged between comrades, the kind of easy, familiar teasing that develops naturally among men who have spent extended time depending on each other under genuinely life-threatening circumstances. These exchanges, ordinary and even mundane on their surface, carry real weight precisely because of the context surrounding them, a reminder that beneath the discipline and tactical competence on display throughout the operation, these remained simply young men, bonded by shared danger and finding whatever moments of normalcy they could amid an otherwise brutal existence. The video draws to a close on a note of cautious optimism, fighters exchanging quiet thanks with one another, an acknowledgement of what they had just survived together and the mutual reliance that had carried them through it. There was no illusion among them that the broader struggle had ended, the recognition clear that more fighting, more danger, and more sacrifice likely waited ahead regardless of how this particular engagement had resolved. Still, in this moment, survival itself felt like something worth acknowledging, a brief pause of gratitude and camaraderie before whatever came next in a war that continued to demand everything from the men fighting it.
They say to him, crouch, 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 move, move.
Давай, иди сюда!
What this footage ultimately captures is not a single clean story of victory, but the full, layered reality of modern warfare, intense combat sequences bleeding into disciplined tactical coordination, personal pain surfacing in the quiet moments between firefights, and camaraderie holding men together through conditions that would break most people entirely. It is fighters showing mercy to a captured enemy even after everything that enemy's side had taken from them, and finding brief flashes of humor and hope in the narrow spaces between danger. This is what the war in Luhansk actually looks like on the ground, not headlines, not abstractions, but real men carrying real weight through every hour of it. If this gave you a genuine sense of what these soldiers endure, subscribe for more, hit like if it held your attention, and drop a comment with your thoughts below. Thank you for watching.